Hello and welcome to the Heat Check podcast, the Miami Herald's Miami Heat podcast. I'm David Wilson and I'm joined, as always, on the other line by Anthony Chiang, our Heat beat writer here at the Herald. Anthony, what's going on?
So much, just enjoying the offseason, David. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. We were originally thinking maybe we weren't going to record this week, but we are here for a quick episode. At least we say it's going to be quick. These always tend to go longer than we expect because it was scheduled release day today. That's the big topic of conversation. Anthony, you want to go game? We're going game by game, right? You're telling me win-loss.
Yeah, I'm a 77-5. So
77-5. That would be a record for those keeping score at home. Obviously, you can find the schedule in a million different places. You can, but go to MiamiHerald.com and read Anthony's story instead, because he's got the breakdown, the takeaways. You could have done 5 takeaways on the schedule release, but instead you just settled for a little bit of a breakdown of what the most important things to know from the schedule. Obviously, a couple of days ago, I'd say a little Heat Twitter uproar about no Christmas games.
Yeah.
I know we're both happy about no Christmas games, though, selfishly. No, they're not playing opening night. Another situation where they, as a team that made the Eastern Conference Finals, could have been. But overall, Anthony, what were your biggest takeaways from this schedule?
Well, they play the Lakers twice. They play the Blazers twice. I'm kidding. I really think, I know everyone loves seeing the schedule, and even for me, it's big because I get to plan my life now.
Yeah,
exactly. The schedule.
I was with Barry earlier today, and he was already Barry Jackson, our colleague, who tends to cover a couple of Heat road trips, and he was already like, well, I'm going to go on this trip, but there's no West Coast trips in the second half of the year, and usually I like to do a West Coast trip. So it's a big deal in Heat media world, certainly. And obviously fans like it too, as you said.
Yeah, our lives are built around this 82-game schedule. But for the most part, it's okay, you know the teams you're playing, right? It's just about I know fans really get into national TV stuff, and I think the Heat have an argument. They could use this as motivation not to have. I mean, they're the only team of the 8 who made it past the first round last season that is not playing on Christmas. Yeah. The other 7 are on Christmas. The Knicks took the Heat spot, but the Knicks obviously were not good last season. They didn't make the playoffs. You also add to the fact the Heat are on national TV 11 times, not counting the NBA TV games. They're on national TV 11 times as of now. Lakers didn't make the playoffs 27 times, which, again, that's not surprising. They have LeBron. They have Anthony Davis. It's LA. But 27-11. The Sixers on national TV 23 times for the Heat's 11. The Heat obviously beat the Sixers last year in the playoffs. The Knicks, who did not make the playoffs, so we just stated, on national TV 13 times for the Heat's 11 games. So, yeah, I mean, I think fans probably have a case to make about the Heat maybe not getting enough due for what they did last season. They pretty much returned the same team except for PJ Tucker. But it's like we've talked about for the last few years, David. They don't have there's not really drama on this team. They don't have that star that fans are going to pay anything to watch. Jimmy Butler is great, but he doesn't play the most exciting brand of basketball. Bam Adebayo is great, but he's not going to, he's not going for 35 or 40 every night. They play a different brand, and I think that's reflected on the schedule this year.
Yeah, there's, they as good as Jimmy Butler and Bam are, they lack the traditional superstar, in the sense of the guy who's going to be on all the ESPN promotional stuff in the preseason or on a video game cover or in commercials. I guess Jimmy's in commercials. I actually really tend to like Jimmy Butler's commercials. I think they're quite charming and different than every other NBA player's commercial. It's all intense, and then Jimmy Butler is singing Hall & Oates on an airplane or whatever. Actually, Hootie and the Blowfish on an airplane, I think it was, right? Hall & Oates is a different commercial.
Yeah.
But like you said, it feeds into the classic Heat disrespect storyline, which the Heat they'll take every little droplet that they can to fuel that fire. But like you said, there's a beef for Heat fans to have with. I mean, it doesn't really. Most Heat fans that at least we deal with tend to be Miamians, so it's not that big of a deal. They're watching all the games at home anyway. But obviously, it's like a perpetuating thing, right? Where like the Heat get disrespected in the media, and that means
Right.
they don't get games on TV. And because they're not on TV and people aren't watching how fun they are to watch or how good Jimmy Butler is, they get disrespected more. So it perpetuates itself a little bit. But like you said, the Heat are I think, content to fly under the radar whenever possible.
Yeah, I don't think this is like necessarily surprising. I think that it would have been more surprising if the Heat would have gotten 25 national TV games, right? Because it's just like they're just not that team that like is a huge draw nationally for whatever reason. It's probably for the reasons we just discussed. But even though they've been so successful, and last year they were one shot away from the NBA Finals, like until they got to that point, nobody was really like paying that much attention to them because again, they don't have a LeBron James.
Right.
They don't have, Dwayne Wade. Like when Dwayne Wade was on the team, like there was a bigger national draw. Even if the team was technically worse than this, last season's Heat team, like they were just a bigger draw because of Dwayne Wade and the style he played. So, yeah, I just think yes, it could provide a chip on the Heat's shoulder, but I kind of think a lot of times that's usually overstated.
Yeah, they ultimately fans care a lot more about what television channel the game is on than I mean, I'm sure the organization like loves to be on ESPN, right? It's good for marketing, all that kind of stuff, like the business side of things. But obviously, Pat Riley is not looking at this schedule and being like, we're only on ESPN 5 times. Like that's not happening.
Yeah, yeah, and I will say, like, I'm guessing most players, most coaches probably are happy they're not playing on Christmas.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice to
Guys
be
don't
home
like
on
it.
Christmas. Yeah, like you want to be home with your family on Christmas usually. So I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, again, fans will care. They want to watch, their team play on that big stage on Christmas Day. It's always fun. But for those involved, including media, it's always a win when you're not playing on Christmas.
Yeah, definitely. And for, it's kind of like the Heat have done it before, right? Been there, done that. Like I get why, like what are the Knicks Christmas? People always get annoyed that the Knicks are on Christmas.
The Knicks are the ones who took the Heat spot.
Right. I get people who are like annoyed about that, but like was it last year the Hawks were in? Like I get wanting to get different teams in, kind of when they're on the rise, on that Christmas Day showcase because like the Hawks, for example, like their fan when have they ever gotten to watch games on Christmas? I remember when I was in high school or maybe or when I was in college or right out of college, the Wizards played on Christmas and it was like a huge deal in DC, like because I don't think they ever did even during the Gilbert Arenas era. Like it's a bigger deal in some like in the sense of growing the game. Like you want to mix up the teams in that Christmas Day slot, and I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to justify it because, like I said, I'm happy they're not playing on Christmas. You're happy they're not playing on Christmas. Most players on the team are probably happy they're not playing on Christmas. People in the organization are probably happy they're not playing on Christmas. But again, it's another one where it's like I get why the fans are like annoyed about it, or at least pretending to be annoyed about it, right? That's half the Heat shtick, right? Too is you pretend to be aggrieved by everything.
For the Heat fan, it's weird when they are getting a lot of attention.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like it's like what's going on? I don't like this. Like they want that.
Well, I was gonna say people complain that the Heat don't get attention now, and people complained when the Heat were getting too much attention during the LeBron era, right? It's just like. Like they were the most covered team in NBA history. Like it's not like people don't care about the Heat. It's just different times, different star power, obviously, than they had during the Big Three era. Anything else that stood out to you from the schedule?
I mean, starting with a 4-game homestand, I think it's the most consecutive home game the Heat has ever begun a season with. A tough 4-game homestand too. Like couple Eastern Conference tests. You open it up with the Bulls, then you play the Celtics in the second game, and then a back-to-back at home against the Raptors.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 likely playoff teams. You open the season with, so that'll be interesting. And they have 10 of the first 14 at home. So they'll have an opportunity to get off to a pretty good start, considering all the home games. They do have some tough ones in there. But then they hit the road for pretty much like the next month or month and a half. So in the end, they'll play 41 home games and 41 road games, and it'll even out. But
you count it out?
I counted it out just to make sure. Actually, well, it still counts as a road game, but they play the Spurs in Mexico City, so they don't go to San Antonio this year.
That's true.
That game will be in Mexico City.
Not going to turn off the air conditioning.
Yes. Probably not. They won't have a bat in the arena either. So that's another notable in Mexico City, December 17th against the Spurs. It's weird. Like there's a lot of. They did this a few years ago to reduce travel during the pandemic, where they had like this. The Bucks play both of their games in Miami on the same trip. They make one trip to Miami, and there's a lot of that this season. But I think it's 7 situations where like the Heat are playing the same team in consecutive games, but 6 of them, the Heat are in Miami. So like for the Heat, it's not really reducing the travel.
It must be because Miami is so far for most teams, right? Like Miami is like pretty much as far
like
from
Portland.
another city. It's Miami and Portland always get talked about as like Portland, I guess, is probably the team that's farthest from any other team way up there. But it must be because of that where teams don't want to make 2 trips down to Miami. And if you're a West Coast team, especially, it's or Toronto, right? You said Toronto the first week of the season, basically. Yeah. Like that's a haul, obviously, from Toronto to Miami. So obviously they'll come back, right? Because they're or is that their only
well,
2 in Miami? That's it. So
they're done in Miami in the first week of the season.
Yeah.
The Heat that situation for the Heat only happens on the road once. It's against the Celtics in Boston.
Mm-hmm.
But so it doesn't really reduce the Heat travel much, but it's helping teams that really only have to come to Miami once. And I guess it's good for teams that want to spend an extended stretch in Miami. They've got like 4 or 5 days down here. So that's always good too.
The South Beach flu is going to be back in style this year potentially. I'm really looking forward to Game 2, that Heat Celtics Game 2. Like that is, that's going to be one of the marquee games of the first week of the season, I would think. Like it'll get hyped up in that manner. Certainly locally, we'll be doing our part. I'm sure in Boston it will, and I would think, obviously there's a lot of variables that could still move around with free agency that could change some of the storylines before the season starts. But after how incredible that Heat Celtics series was, and like the last moment of the Heat season was Jimmy Butler missing a 3 against the Celtics in Miami, and we're back at the scene of the crime in the second game of the season. So that opening 4-game homestand, you can't make or break a season in the first week of the year, but that'll really set the tone. I think if they've got some tough games, if they can, I think we'll have a pretty good idea about, again, like barring injuries and trades and all that stuff, we'll have a pretty good idea of what this Heat team looks like just based off the first week of the year, knowing that a lot, the lineups and rotations will get tinkered a lot, but it's a really fun stretch to open the season.
If Kevin Durant was on the Heat right now, how many national TV games would the Heat have?
If Kevin Durant gets traded to the Heat tomorrow, do they move him to Christmas?
I mean, there's flex games there. Like, I'm sure that he would be flexing to a bunch of
it's the second half of the year, right? They can flex a ton of games. I think it happened with the Heat last year, right? They kept getting flexed. There was a couple they got flexed out, I think, but a lot they got flexed in. I mean, that is why there are flex games in the NBA, right? Because the superstar movement is so unpredictable. Mexico City, are you excited to see the Heat back down there? They went in 2017.
I actually missed the first time they went out there. I was at the Palm Beach Post, and my colleague went instead of me, so this will be my first time. But it'll be interesting to see kind of obviously the city and like just the love of basketball over there, because I've heard that it's pretty rabid.
It's interesting. You don't hear a lot about a lot of NBA players coming out. Gustavo Ayón is the only Mexican player I can think of. Like it's still, compared to some of these other, especially South American countries, does not seem like it is produced NBA players. But like you said, it'll be interesting to see the excitement around the team there.
Yeah, for sure. And it counts as a Spurs home game, like we said. So the Heat still have 41 home games. It's just it'll be no trip to San Antonio this year. So that's a game that stands out obviously among the 82 just because it's so different. Playing in a different country, obviously.
All right, got anything else, or should we move on to other topics?
I think we pretty much covered it. Like lack of respect, first homestand, pretty juicy with pretty good matchups. The Mexico City game, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, PJ Tucker reunion. You wrote one kind of the one watching
He
when
only
the Sixers.
Yeah, they actually only come to Miami once, I believe. Yeah, they only come to Miami once, and it's March 1st, so it'll be a while until then.
Oh, one other fun one. Heat in Atlanta on MLK Day should be pretty fun.
Yes.
I think.
Yes,
Obviously, the Hawks. They play at home on MLK Day now every year. I would like they've obviously they've got the MLK alternate jerseys. That's a obviously a rematch from the playoffs last year. A good fan, it's increasingly become a really good fan base, I think, in Atlanta, although I don't know how it was last year when that team was underachieving a little bit. But, it's late in the year, so if the Hawks are underachieving again, this whole conversation might seem pretty dumb. But that has a chance to be a fun one and a good atmosphere. Is it going to be an afternoon game? I don't think you had that in the...
Yeah, it's 3:30.
Yeah, so I love those afternoon MLK Day games. I like that the NBA has carved that out a little bit as a it's not Christmas obviously, but it's kind of a little like late season they've tried to kind of own that day and get basketball going on all day, and the Heat, that'll be potentially one of the marquee games on that day.
Yeah, and the Heat also play on New Year's Eve in Utah. So the Heat are
Anthony
working.
is going to have New Year's in Utah.
And it's it's a 10 p.m. Eastern game. So, actually, sorry, 9 p.m. It's a 9 p.m. game. So I'll pretty much, I'll be there.
It'll be done it'll be done, and then the ball will drop like 20 minutes later on the East Coast. Obviously, for you, it'll be
Yeah, I'll be interviewing Kyle Lowry while the ball drops in Miami.
Yeah.
Fun times.
Okay, you wanted to wrap up by talking about Tyler Herro, part of the. You went out and talked to him. Was that yesterday? Monday?
Yesterday. At a Dayland Target, yeah.
At Dayland Target, right down the street from me in South Miami. Also, Jake Paul got in a little bit on the Tyler Herro media tour. He was on with Hawk and Crowder, I think, and talked a little bit about his friendship with Tyler Herro. I've been in the same location as Jake Paul by the way, on back-to-back days. He was at Dolphins practice today and took some very not pretty batting practice swings at the Marlins game while I was there yesterday.
He follows you on Twitter too, right?
Yeah, exactly. I'm actually gonna be in one of his videos. We're gonna start a little collaboration. I'm actually his next boxing opponent.
You get him on a podcast?
Yeah. I mean, hey, if you went on Hawk and Crowder, he's clearly available.
Probably can. Yeah.
So anyway, what Tyler talk about when you were out there with him?
Yeah, I mean, it was the first time he's spoken to us since exit interview day, and obviously nothing has transpired since then, but there's been a lot of speculation surrounding his name. All the trade rumors, the talk about the extension and what the Heat are going to do with that, and the implications tied to that. So we were able to ask him briefly about that. And, he said all the right things. Basically saying he's been in rumors pretty much his entire career, which is pretty much true.
It's true. Yeah.
Knows how to deal with it, and it just is what it is. But I guess his main message was, and this is a quote, I think that said it all, was the rumors, they don't bother me, whether I'm on the Heat or somewhere else, I'm getting ready for the season. So I think he's kind of taking it as this, I'm going to focus on me this off season, and wherever I am, it is what it is. But it was just interesting to talk to him. Because again, we haven't talked to him in a few months about the extension. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But he said he knows as much as we do. So I take that as the Heat have not really had much conversation with him about the extension yet, which is not surprising because they have 2 more months really to get that done. And as soon as he signs it, then he can't be traded. So why do it any sooner than you need to? Mm-hmm. But he did, that was his answer to that question is his quote was, "I'm just waiting my turn and we'll see what happens. There's a deadline, but I'm going to let my agent take care of that and we'll see and see what happens." So that's also something that's unresolved, and he will have a decision to make on that in the coming weeks.
Is Tyler Herro going to be the new CJ McCollum? Or I know CJ McCollum would always get annoyed that his name popped up in trade rumors basically for 5 years straight. Is that kind of Tyler Herro's destiny right now? It feels like. I mean, obviously I don't think his rookie year he was necessarily in trade rumors, right? But pretty much since then, it has been nonstop for him for 2+ years. But I mean, my sense of time is all thrown off with the pandemic and stuff. But like the last 2 off seasons, it's been like kind of nonstop with him.
Yeah, starting with all the James Harden stuff.
Right.
James Harden being traded from Houston.
Yeah, we've been talking about Tyler Herro trades for 2 years on this podcast, pretty much.
Yeah, and
whatever. I don't know. Like I said,
he'll get a
fake.
He'll get a 1-year break if he signs this extension.
That's true.
So that'll be good for him to know, like, basically he's not completely untradeable, but essentially he can't be traded for the next year. So
yeah, it's interesting because like the old like idea was like I can't wait to settle down in a city and like make it my home. Like for an athlete, like Tyler Herro is not going to play his whole career in Miami. Like,
I mean, wouldn't that be ironic if he did? Like if he did, like the one guy.
But I'm not even saying because he's going to get traded. Just like that's how basketball works.
Yeah.
Like. Yeah. For the list of guys who are going to play with one, like the only active players in the NBA right now who are going to play their whole career with one team are like Udonis, Giannis, I bet, and Steph. Like that's it. And maybe Draymond and Clay. Like maybe that whole Warriors group will just stay together forever. But like even Draymond is in like trade rumors.
Yeah. And Giannis, who knows, right? I mean,
Giannis, who knows, right?
Even Dwayne Wade played a few years outside of Miami.
Right.
You just never know in a career what's going to happen.
Like you said, like Tyler will, I'm sure he will, he clearly likes Miami a lot. And I'm sure he's going to be very excited when he gets that little bit of stability. But like you said, even if he signs that extension, that's 1 year, and then we'll be right back at it talking about trade rumors. Unless he ascends to become like a top 20 player in the NBA in that time frame. Like that's just it's the nature of the business in the NBA at large, but especially in Miami, where I mean Pat Riley and just the expectation in this city is that the Heat are always looking to improve and go after the next guy. And when you're a guy of Tyler Herro's, I mean even Bam, right? Bam is like an all-star player, a defensive player of the year contender, and even he can't escape it in Miami. Like he wouldn't escape it in most cities in the NBA that are at the Heat's level, that are title contenders or conference finals contenders. So it's gonna come with the business. And the interesting part, like you said about Tyler Herro, is it feels like it's pretty much been since day one.
Yeah, as soon as July 1, 2023 hits, he signs his extension, we'll be back at it, like you said, talking about hypothetical trades involving Tyler Herro. I mean, kind of feel bad for him, right? Because it's probably not a fun existence to be just look up on social media and you're like always being.
Well, especially he's that generation where he's on Twitter and Instagram, right? He sees it.
Yeah, he sees it. I mean, he's probably become almost numb to it at this point, but it's probably still not fun. And a lot of it still is like, he is naturally going to be at the center of any trade conversation that he has for a star, right? Because he's one of the top. He is probably the top trade chip when you're not including Bam or Jimmy in any deal. So, but some of it too is speculation of just Twitter, like the Gordon Hayward report that came out that said, the Heat could trade Tyler Herro for Gordon Hayward. Like the Heat aren't trading Tyler Herro for Gordon Hayward, right? So like a lot of this too is speculation. So I'm sure it's tough for him to deal with, but like he said, at Target yesterday, he has become used to it.
All right. You got anything else before we wrap up?
I think that's it. We're still waiting on Udonis's.
Yes. Oh yeah. Let's do like 2 minutes on that. He said still not sure about his future. Just take us into his thought process. Maybe what you're hearing.
Yeah, I still expect him to come back. I do. I think the Heat have reserved a spot for him on their roster. I think playing 20 seasons is important to him because it'll put him in a really elite, exclusive class. So I do think he's going to come back. I think part of the reason he hasn't made a decision yet is because A, he can take his time, right? What's the rush? And B, like, his family has a say in it. Like, his family has to be okay with him again for the 20th season being away, traveling for most of the next, 7-8 months, and doing this again. I would think, I don't, this is just my gut, this part is just my gut, but I would think this will be it. Like, I think you get to 20 seasons, you reach that mark and probably retire after this one. But who knows who Udonis? I think 2 years ago we thought he was going to retire and he's still playing. But I still, even though a few days ago he did say he wasn't sure yet. He's going back and forth. I still expect him to return to play for a 20th season.
And when he retires, he'll just get another job with the Heat, basically, that will let him do something.
Yeah, he's a lifer.
Yeah.
He's a lifer, as they call it.
All right, let's wrap things up there. You can follow Anthony on Twitter at Anthony_Chiang. Still quiet for the most part now this time of year, but monitoring Kevin Durant and Tyler Herro extensions. And, we're in that period where there's not a lot going on, but big news could happen at any moment in Heat world, just because of all the variables that are still hanging around out there. You can follow me on Twitter at DBWilson2. I've mostly shifted into football mode. We're really coming up on football season. I'm going out to some high school football games on Thursday night. We got Hurricanes kicking off the 2 weeks after. Yeah, 2 weeks after. Dolphins right around the corner. And then not long after that will be the Heat. So we'll be back in the most wonderful time of the year here in South Florida. Which is that beautiful window where the Dolphins are not out of contention and the Heat are just ramping things up.
Yeah, this might be the rare year where the Heat are in contention. I mean, the Dolphins are in contention for most of the fall.
Yeah, how are you? You're we talk Hurricanes from time to time on here. How are you feeling about the Dolphins right now?
I'm always cautious. Well, even if I'm optimistic, I'm always cautiously optimistic because they usually disappoint, right? And they usually don't meet expectations, but they have a good team, right? I mean, you would think probably the second best roster in the division. So they should contend for at least a wild card, you would think. But a lot of it will come down to Tua. So we'll see. But I will say I'm cautiously optimistic about this Dolphins team.
I think that's the right temperature for anyone to be on it. They went 9-8 last year. Like, it's not like they were terrible. They were in contention until the end of the year, actually, right? Technically.
Yeah, it's just a weird year. But they start like 1-6 or something like that.
And then got really hot in the middle of the year. Yeah. Well, they played a really bad schedule, honestly, for the most part during that run. But football season should be fun. With 2 new coaches. I would say we haven't had this in a while, but I think we just had it actually. Whatever Brian Flores and Manny Diaz's first year was, I think that's.
Every 3 or 4 years we have this, I feel like.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. The first year is at least always fun, no matter how it goes eventually. So, and I'm optimistic about both of these coaches. So, let's wrap things up there. Thanks, as always, for listening, and we'll talk to you guys a little bit later on.